So here we go. Thank you so much for joining me today. So I want to start off by telling you who I am and why I'm here. So back when I decided to be an SLP, I thought I was signing up for a rewarding career that would leave me feeling energized. And when I started grad school, I thought that by the end I'd feel like I knew what I was doing and that I'd be confident in myself. And I actually wanted to specialize in medical settings because I hated my language disorders class. It was one of the lowest grades I got in graduate school, and I didn't like it because it made me uncomfortable and it just felt messy. And to be honest, I didn't want to deal with those academic language disorders because it just seemed really overwhelming. And I didn't think that the role of the school SLP was as respected as being a specialist in a medical setting, and just overall was not really keen on the idea of working in the schools. But when I looked for jobs, it was way easier to find a clinical fellowship position in a school. So I took the job and figured I'd bail the first chance I got. That's obviously not what happened, which is why I'm here sharing this information with you today. But first, I need to pause before we start and disclose a couple pieces of information. So as an individual, I can't give CEUs, but I can give CMHs, which stands for Certification Maintenance Hours. What that means is that this training isn't directly linked up to the ASHA registry, so you can count this as continuing education hours. You just need to track it yourself. Secondly, the first 90 minutes or so of this presentation will be focused on showing you ways to treat language disorders more effectively. So that's what you can count as your hours. This information I'm going to share with you relates to a paid program that I offer. And once I'm done delivering the content, I will be sharing information about the program after I'm done if you want to expand on what you've learned in this free event. You're by no means obligated to join by being on my free mailing list or by attending this event. My goal is to give you a bird's eye view and give you enough information to go ahead and start using this system right away, just from having attended this webinar. But for those of you who want to know more, I want to give you that opportunity as well. So you'll learn about that at the end once I'm done sharing the information with you. I know that it's getting late for some of us here, especially if you live on the East Coast, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy life to hang out with me for the next hour or so. So I wanted to show my appreciation to those of you who stay for the entire time and who decide to stay and sign up for the paid program. So that's why I'm going to show you a way to get this free gift at the end that would normally be $97. This is called the Testing Time Saver for Language Evaluations, and what it is a set of tables like this one that provides a quick reference tool for 12 different language evaluations. And I've gotten permission from the publishers to outline this in these tables. So each one of these tables outlines exactly what students need to do on each subtest and what construct it measures, so you can quickly pick appropriate language evaluations. And you can see that in the middle column. And I've given you a description of the behavior the student has to do for each subtest, so you can literally copy that language and put it in your narrative for your reports. And when you explain your test results, this way you don't have to start from scratch when you write your reports. You can just copy and paste the language that goes along with each test, and then insert your student's score for each subtest. So this is something I'm going to offer free to anyone who signs up for the paid program at the end of the webinar. So I'll tell you about how you can get this at the end of the training. But for now, let's get to the content that I have promised you in this webinar. All right, just to let you know before we start, there will be a couple points in this presentation where there will be a slight delay, and that's just because I'll be transferring between my slides on the screen and my face on the screen so that I can answer your questions. So that's just how the program works. So if you think that you've lost me and I stop for a couple minutes, just hang out and stick with me. So during those times, I will be just pausing to look at your questions and going back and forth from the slides and my face being on the screen. So with that, let's get started. As I said, I intended to stay away from the schools and go medical. So that's not what happened. Here's a picture of me, my husband, and my stepdaughter when we were visiting family in the San Francisco area. And I'm showing you this because my life took a different direction than I thought it would. I've been in the schools since 2004, which was when I started practicing, even though I adamantly did not want to be a school SLP because I knew I'd get a caseload full of students with language issues. And I just didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. So because of that, I used to spend hours compiling activities and getting my materials together. And when I first started working, I wasn't a parent, and it didn't really matter when I got home. And I could work on my doctoral work and my planning and paperwork whenever. But if any of you have kids, you know how guilty you feel when you don't get home to your family or when you're stuck behind your laptop when you want to be having quality time with them. And even if you don't have kids, you want to be able to enjoy your leisure time and have some freedom to relax and enjoy life. And that really gets difficult when we're burnt out at work and when our work spills into our free time, which is exactly what happened to me. So I knew I had to find a better way because I felt like I was missing out on life. Of course, this training isn't relevant to everyone because there are different challenges across different settings. So let me help you determine if you should stick around for the rest of this training. Now, if you're working with school-age students and they're having academic issues because of poor language skills, and you've ever said something like, "My students struggle with everything. I don't have enough time in my sessions to cover it all. I don't even know where to start." So if you're feeling like this, you're definitely in the right place and you're going to want to stick around. Next, if your workday feels like an 8-hour sprint as you run from session to session and you're running yourself ragged, trying to cram as much as you can into your sessions, and your students still aren't getting better, this training is also exactly what you've been looking for. Next, if you feel like you're not exactly sure what an SLP should be doing in language therapy for those school-age populations that makes you different from what teachers do or even what teaching assistants do, and you feel like a glorified tutor because you're kind of guessing and you're not exactly sure what you should be doing, this training is also for you. And even if you have got a good handle on your role, but you're sick of spending your nights and weekends catching up on planning and paperwork for those language cases, because we know for language, since it's not as straightforward as some of the other things we treat, that this can just take more effort and just more brain power to get things together for these cases. So if you're tired of spending so much time doing that, this training will also be very helpful to you. And next, if you just wish you had a better system that would show you exactly what you should be doing in language therapy, or a framework that you could follow that would help lay things out for you and keep them more focused and organized so that you know that you are making every second count with your students and you know that you're doing things that will help them make progress and meet their goals, I'm going to lay that out for you in this training. So now that we've covered that, let's give a brief overview of what we're going to cover. So in this training, you're going to learn why SLPs treating language disorders burn out and what to do about it. And I've said before, it's probably not what you think, because we're also going to learn how to get better results by focusing on fewer things. I think a lot of us feel like we should be working harder, or we should be doing more, or we should be trying to cover more with our students. And that actually might not get us the results that we want. So I'm going to talk about what you can be doing to be more efficient and get better results with your students by actually teaching them less and focusing on fewer things. And finally, I'm going to show you how you can create a work-life balance. I'm going to show you the system that I've used to do that so that I know I'm working efficiently and being thorough, but still helping my students meet their goals, so that I am not compromising my life and my free time, but I'm also giving my students exactly what they need and I'm coming to work ready to go, feeling recharged. So we're going to cover all of those things in this training. With that, let's get to the training. Here's the first question that may be on your mind if you're working with school-age populations, whether you're in the schools or not. Why am I so burnt out? As I said before, this happened to me, and I know it's happened to a ton of other SLPs. So when I first started, every day I'd promised myself I'd get to work extra early so I could get organized and find that magic bullet for those tricky language cases. But half the time I was so overwhelmed that I'd just hit my snooze button and come into work at the last minute and just feel frazzled. And I'd just end up wearing myself out. And I kept telling myself if I just worked a little harder, things would get better, but that's not what happened. And instead, I always felt scattered. I had students who didn't get better no matter what I did or no matter how hard I worked. And I would just end up grabbing random things off my shelves or just getting these pointless worksheets that didn't really have a clear purpose or drilling flashcards, which made me feel like a glorified teaching assistant because there wasn't really any rhyme or reason to it. And in addition to that, the paperwork was also a huge issue. So, nobody really told me when I signed up for this that the pile of reports on my desk would just consume me, take up my free time, and that it would be really hard to come up with goals and present level statements for language because it just took so much more work to figure out what you should be doing for those cases. And, I thought I was going to be helping people, not sitting in front of a computer all weekend. And things just got more scattered over time. And I felt like a failure because I didn't see any measurable improvements with my students. And, I think if you've ever been in this situation, you just feel powerless because it just seems like there isn't enough time in the day to teach kids all that they need to know to catch up to their peers. And it can feel like the system is broken. And I know I felt this way, and other people have agreed with me that you just feel like you're not good at your job. You feel like you're the worst SLP in the world, and it can feel like you are failing your students. Now, there's a reason why I was having this problem, and I'm going to share why in a minute. But first, let's talk about what wasn't the problem, because I assumed at one point that some of these things were the issue. So, number one, I thought maybe I just need to work harder. Maybe I need to spend extra time at work. Maybe I need to get to work earlier and just, if I work harder and do more, it's just going to get better. That wasn't the case. Another thing, I thought maybe I need to get another degree or a certification or, some type of fancy training or credential. Now, disclaimer, I have my doctorate and it was very valuable to go through that process, but nothing magical happened the day that I got my diploma, and that wasn't the magic solution to the issue. Next, I thought maybe I just don't have a choice. Maybe just the school systems are just broken. My administrators are putting too much on my caseload, or I just have too many students. I don't have a choice. I can't possibly give good therapy because of, insert whatever excuse there. I would come up with tons of different excuses. People don't respect me, people don't understand my role, but none of those things were the true root cause of the problem. And last, I thought maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. And if you've ever felt like this and you feel like you're not good enough, or maybe you feel like you need to, spend tons of money to get another degree, or you don't have a choice, or maybe you're just not working hard enough, it's probably not the case. I guarantee that you don't need to wear yourself out. If you want to get another degree, do it for the right reasons, but don't feel like it's a magic fix. And I guarantee that you do have a choice. Even though we have a lot of limitations placed on us, there are things you can do. And finally, the fact that you're here shows me that you are good enough. You are a dedicated therapist. And so I'm going to show you how you can make this change. Most likely, if you're feeling scattered, the issue is not that you aren't capable, and it's not that it's impossible to get results or that you need to do more. Rather, the problem could be that you don't have a system. I want to share something I've learned from a number of different experts who coach high-level performers to help them increase productivity. One of them being David Allen. Allen and a number of other experts talk about what's known as decision-making fatigue. What happens is that we only have a limited amount of willpower to get through the day, and each little decision, no matter how small, that we have to make requires us to use our cognitive resources. We only have so much in the tank. So if we don't have a clear automated process for doing certain things in our lives, it takes us a lot of energy to decide what to do next, which ends up wearing us out. That's why sometimes when we're having a bad day, we sometimes don't feel like we have the energy to go and work out, or we don't always make good decisions about what we eat. If we have a clear process that's essentially made some of those decisions for us up front, and we don't have to keep starting from square one, then we can feel less burnt out and we use less energy to get through the day. So this is exactly why I wasn't motivated to get up early in the morning to go plan for my language cases. I first had to make the decision to get up when my alarm went off. And then I had to decide what students to focus on first. And then I had to figure out what materials to select and so on. So I was already depleted by the time I actually started my sessions for the day, which, as you know, when you're working with students, you have to make a lot of decisions on the fly. And I was already starting with an empty tank. So if you're already at that point when you start your workday, imagine how that's going to impact the choices you make, not only at work, but in your personal life. Ultimately, when you have some type of a framework or process that you can use as a starting point, it reduces that cognitive effort that it takes you to do something. So when we create that system, we ultimately are reducing the amount of decisions we need to make each day, which ends up helping us because the fewer decisions we make, the easier it is for us to reserve our cognitive resources, which allows us to take a step back and see the bigger picture and make those really important big decisions and help us to evaluate what we're doing. And it creates that space. And I say this is where the quote magic happens, because this is where we can see the patterns that we need to see to make those high level decisions that can really help us make a bigger impact. When we're not stuck being busy with those little mundane day-to-day tasks, we can actually make those important decisions that have a bigger impact on our students. Now, when you saw the title of this training, you might have been thinking, how is it possible to get better results by doing less, especially when some of our students are so far behind? Now, number one, know that when you have a good system, it feels like you're doing less because you can get through your protocol with less effort. So it's not that you're cutting corners, you're just taking out the cognitive effort. It's like when you learn to drive, it took you a lot of conscious effort to think about what you were supposed to be doing at first, but now that you've got the process down, you can do it effortlessly. Number two, it's possible to get better results by focusing on fewer things with our students if we're focusing on the right things. There are some proven techniques and components that get us more mileage than others, so it's a better use of our time to spend more time on fewer things than covering more, but never really scratching the surface. When I realized that this was the issue, my first instinct was to look for some type of program or system for language therapy. But no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find anything that covered everything that we typically need. or that was specifically designed for SLPs treating school-age children, especially with the service delivery model we have in the schools. I wanted a curriculum, and when I've surveyed my readers, they've said that too, that we need some type of a skeleton framework to give us more of a hierarchy. But the problem was I couldn't find one. So I had to create my own. And I have language therapy curriculum in quotes because I use the term curriculum with caution. Because when you're doing therapy, you can't necessarily have a cookie cutter system that works the same for everyone. But you can look at the common patterns and create something to use as a starting point. So that's what I've done. All right, now I'm going to tell you about that system in just a couple minutes, but first I want to pop back onto the screen and just check in with all of you and see where you're at. So you'll just experience a slight pause here for a couple minutes while I switch my camera. And while you're waiting for me to get back onto the screen, take some time and give me some feedback in the chat. Tell me your least favorite thing about doing language therapy. And if someone could wave their magic wand and take all your problems away relating to this area, tell me how your work life would look. So I will be with you in just a minute.